Debbie Watts. This is Auricula Card Art. Today's card is a shaker card. This is a step-by-step tutorial and you too can achieve this. Let's take a look at the materials you'll need. Once you've read the materials, why not pause the tutorial, grab your craft equipment and let's go into the studio. With your cardstock, first of all, just place your scored base and your mirror card to one side, out of harm's way. We wouldn't want to get ink smudges all over that. Your magnetic sheet, place that on your craft working area. Place on your working cardstock, this is 300 GSM, and then place your abstract stencil over the top, so that with the abstract, of course, if you feel that, oh god, this is not going to get square, don't worry too much, because obviously it's abstract. Once you're happy with your stencil on your cardstock and your magnetic sheet, what you want to do is just take the low tack stencil tape from Sweet Poppy, of course. This is a really low tack, really good quality, just to frame and hold your work in place. There you go. Okay, so just make sure that's nice and firm, and we're ready to stencil. With your oxide and your blending brush, load up. And all you really need to do is simply infill your shapes with your Distress ink. This is the oxide. You can use other inks, entirely your choice, so don't go out specially. This isn't a shaker card just for oxide ink, so whatever blending ink you have, give it a go. You can have a single colour, you can do multicolours, but really it's your choice, your design. I just want to give you the idea of how to make this card. So use your brush and fill the entire stencil with your ink. So you've built up your image on your cardstock. Small circular motions is fine. You don't have to be heavy-handed. And this might take you a few minutes or so. So the trick for this is to make sure that you don't have stencil bleed. It's just to build up the layer, as opposed to try to put too much wet ink. If you put too much wet ink on, there's every chance that it will bleed underneath the bridges. Once you're happy that you've got enough ink on, let's go for the grand reveal. So important, put your lid on your ink and pop that with your brush to one side. Slowly peel off the holding tape that's secured your work in place. Leave the top one on and just lift your work and remove. Wow, isn't that just an amazing stencil? So, it's just a fabulous design, isn't it? And once we've got some shapes cut out and the shaker, I think this abstract stencil is just perfect for the shaker card. Removing your magnetic sheet from your work, of course. You don't want to cut through and end up cutting your magnetic sheet, so we've done with that for the time being. So on your cutting mat, you can use the glass cutting mat or self-healing cutting mat. Please don't use your worktop unless you don't want score marks in your work surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the design, and some of the shapes are quite close to the border. I didn't want too much of a frame, so just look and decide where you actually want your shaker to pop through. I think I'm going to put the sentiment here. Okay, so I want to keep that solid. So therefore on this card I am going to cut this semicircle. I think I will cut this shape here and the bottom shape, okay? So yeah, I think that will work. So taking your craft knife, just very carefully cut through the shape, okay? So take your time doing this, there's no rush. Do we ever get a straight line? Stay as close to the shape as you possibly can. Just cut the border out, the outline. Probably hear that on my cutting mat. Go over the lines again just to make sure you've got no snags and you get a nice, clear, clean, crisp cut. So once you've cut that, pop out, just as you would with a die cut, your shape. We don't need that unless obviously you want to keep that for another card in the future. So, you know, that's probably one of the rare times that I'll chuck anything away. So, giving you the idea, let's go cut out the other pieces. There you go. We have now 4 different shapes that we are able to put the shaker beads through. So, you can see probably the shapes better on the reverse side. So I think that's going to look great, isn't it? The next stage of your shaker card, flip it over, make sure your surface is clean, and take your acetate, and you want to cut shapes from the acetate to overlay your cut shapes. You could do a whole sheet of acetate. It's a bit of a waste, so I'm just going to cut out some small sections, 2 actually. I think I can incorporate these 3 into a single piece and do a separate piece for the bottom shape. So I know it's hard picking up the acetate on the camera, but I've got the 2 pieces cut. So a larger piece for the top 3 shapes. You need to make sure that you're not going to leave any edges for those beads to seep through, and a smaller piece for the bottom shape. I want to fix my acetate sheet in place now, so I'm just literally going to put some red clear ultra sticky tape around the shapes. It doesn't have to be exact, but this is just to hold your acetate in place, okay? So this isn't to hold the beads in place on the acetate. This is for your acetate onto your cardstock. You have your red tape in place, so peel off that ultra cling and always static red backing to reveal the sticky tape, and place your acetate over your card shape and firmly press so that you get a good stick of the acetate to your card. So that's the screen that's going to prevent your beads coming through. So do the same with the top half. With the acetate in place, if you flip over the card, probably the camera's not going to pick it up. Oh yeah, you can just see the reflection. So you've got the acetate over the shapes that's going to hold your beads in. So we have to now create a frame for those beads to sit in. This is the fiddly bit. If you have foam tape on a roll, you can very, very quickly use this to make a frame almost a millimetre from the edge of the cut apex. My foam tape is only 2mm, unfortunately, so if I use the foam, foam on a roll, then obviously my beads aren't going to shake. I could layer up and layer up, but again, I'll use that for another day on another design. So I'm going to take my 5mm foam pads and leaving one of the sticky side fix in place all around the shape. Now you need to really be careful that you don't leave a gap in between the foam pads, because those sneaky little beads will move into that gap and your shaker card will eventually lose its contents. So what we're doing here is creating a frame, as I say. Hopefully you can see that on the camera, but it's about 1 millimetre away, leaving like a tiny border, I guess. So do that around the entire shape. When you come to a corner, if you just overlay the edge adjacent to the last foam pad in the row, you create a nice secure corner frame so that these sneaky beads aren't going to pop out from. If you were to put corner to corner, then there's a possibility that those beads would actually fall through there. So I'm hoping you can see how I've laid that out on the card, just to keep avoid any gaps appearing. With the last foam pad in place, you can actually see, hopefully the camera is picking that up, sorry about the light, let me just angle that differently, there you go. So you can see, you can't see the foam pads through the other side, and you've got a nice capture frame for those beads to sit in. So you do that with the other shapes on the card. The good thing about the foam pads is you can actually cut them to create small slithers. So down the side here, I was pretty close to the edge with a full foam pad. So I've just trimmed, before affixing the foam pad to the card of course, a small slither off of the foam pad so that I have actually got a border. So when I do flip it over, you're not going to see the edge of the foam pad. So that's important. Again, if you do have a tricky angle, you can slice the foam pad to create your own shape. As I keep saying, it's important that you've got no gaps. So here you can see, just spacing really, there's a gap. So if I don't do something about that, those sneaky beads are going to leak out. So with one of these small slithers that I cut off from here, I'm just going to take it, pull back the foam pad and insert it. As you can see, you create some crazy patterns, but it is important that you fill all those gaps in. We've finished with the foam pads for now, and you can see we've used quite a few, but it's really, really important to make sure that you have your frames. It would be easy if you thought, well, that's close to that shape, but if you didn't have a foam pad as a bridge, then your beads would never appear in this section, because they'd simply all go to the bottom. And therefore this will be completely full with beads and you'd have no beads in this section at all. So it is important to create that bridge shape between your apexes that you cut out. Before we put the beads in, just flip your card over just to make sure that you can't see any of your foam pads. If you can see them down the edges, just simply trim to make sure that you're not seeing it. You will see some of the backing paper peeping through at this stage, but don't worry too much about that. Just focus on whether you can see your foam pads, and take the scissors and gently snip any that you can see. I want to just make sure that I have got a backing plate for the shapes, okay? And this is what will seal in the beads into the shape and stop them moving and leaking. So I'm using the same mirror cardstock that I have for the matte and layering, and I'm just going to cut shapes. It doesn't have to be exact. So at this stage you could maybe, the bits that you cut out, use it as a template and cut about half a centimetre or sorry, cut a centimetre bigger so that it will fit onto the foam pads. If you want it to be nice and neat, then you can do that, but I'm just going to create a card piece that will fit over. So again, making sure it's going to affix on all of the foam pads around your shape. A bit fiddly, but I've now cut my shapes. So before we add the beads and before we take the backing off, just overlay them over your shapes, if I can remember which is which, to just make sure you're going to be able to completely seal those beads in shape. Don't worry if you've got a crossover card on card, you're not going to see that at all. The important thing here is just to make sure that you are absolutely covering those foam pads. Focusing on one shape at a time, take your beads and just gently add a few of each of the colours that you want to use and tap in. Don't overcrowd the shape, because otherwise you won't see any of the backing colour through the beads, and there won't be any room for the beads to move either. I'm just going to put a few of these lovely foil shapes in as well. These can be quite clingy and static, so just take your time, and I think that should be enough. And at this stage you can double check that your beads are sitting below the height of your foam pad, so hence why using 5mm foam pads is key, but it does obviously depend on the size of your beads that you're using. Without disturbing your beads too much, simply take a few moments to peel off the backing of your foam pads all around the shape, and just be careful that the beads don't jump and end up sticking on the foam pad, because obviously if they do that, that's not going to create a flat seal between your foam pad and your card backing. With all the backing off of your foam pads, take your mirror card stock and overlay to your foam pads, and just firmly press that in place so that you get a good grip on the foam pad to your mirror card. The reason why I do this one at a time is if you were to put beads in there and flip it, then obviously all your beads would go everywhere. Common sense, but yes, an accident that I've done previously. So I always focus on one shape at a time. So you can see the magic is starting to happen. So mix those beads up and you've got a really, really interesting finish now in your shaker card. So do exactly the same with the other shapes. Beads to one side, backing papers in the bin, clear the decks, and let's reveal the magic. So here goes. Flip it over, and I'm really pleased how this has come out. I think I've got good coverage in each of the apexes, and this is going to look fabulous on the card. I'm going to put the sentiment in this area of the card. I don't really want a square, so I'm going to angle, but first of all I'm going to take the sentiment and place onto an appropriate sized acrylic block. I think the blocks come in all sizes. You can put it on a bigger block, but just be careful you don't have any rocking. As I say, I've previously said before, don't rock the block. And fix your stamp onto your block. Take your stamp ink pad. Make sure you've got some good even coverage. And on a piece of cardstock, I'm just going to stamp my sentiment. Just light pressure. And as you can see, the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge but imagination. I think this is a really good sentiment for this abstract card. Always clean your stamps. I'm just using water and a paper towel before you put your stamps away. And then they're just ready to go for the next time. And look after your stamps and they'll last you a long time. So just water and a paper towel. And then place your stamp, gently peel, don't rip, off of your acrylic block, and place it back onto the stamp holder. Pop it away, and obviously keep these out of direct sunlight. And I've chosen the Sweet Poppy Stencils stamp set for this card. So I've trimmed down my sentiment. I just, as I say, want a quirky shape. I think putting a square shape on that with the abstract shapes there might look a bit unusual. Your choice, of course, but I wanted to keep the sentiment shape and abstract as well. So trim that down with your guillotine. Taking your Distress Oxides, I just want to distress the edges of the card as opposed to just leaving it all cream. So again, circular motions to just introduce. You don't need an awful lot of ink on at this stage. You're just going to just give it that hint of distress and gradually bring the colour to the card, not on the card off. So on your mat and to the card. And finally, I just give it a good few strokes to pick up the actual edge on all four sides. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that. So as you can see, giving it a nice angular shape and distressing it to blend in the sentiment to your card. We're at the final stage now to assemble and complete the card. So I'm going to be using the clear sticky tape double-sided to affix my mirror card to my base card. The mirror card is quite heavy and I prefer to use the red tape, the ultra clear tape, because it seems to handle the heavy cardstock better and is less likely to warp away between the layers. Flip over your mirror card and create a nice border excuse me, around your card, so that take it up to the edges as close as you can. Don't worry too much if you have a millimetre or so, but it will just stop the edges curling up. I always place one through the middle on a diagonal. I don't know why, just personal preference. And just fix those into place. So we want to peel off the sticky tape off of all, and we're going to flip over and position this onto your base card so that you have an even border all the way around. Fixing your mirror card firmly to your base stock. I think it's a brilliant colour. It's beautiful. Put away your cling. These get everywhere. Tidy as you go. The next stage is to take your stenciled top layer, your shaker, flip that over. It's a bit like a messy patchwork at the moment. You're not going to see that. If you wanted to work so neat, you could actually cut a whole section off rather than individuals to keep it nice and neat. But it's a good opportunity to use scraps as well. So take your foam pads and place them around the card edge, and this is going to affix the card to your mirror card. Once you've finished placing the foam pads in their positions, what I want to do to make sure this really sticks to the mirror card is affix some tape. Now, I know it's common sense, but I will say it. The reason I'm not putting the foam pads on here is because you have the foam pads underneath, so you already have the same depth. So simply stick some tape over the back of your holding card. It's probably got a more professional name than that, but I'm calling it holding card because it's holding those beads in place. And then peel off all of your backing from the tape and the foam pads. Making sure your card is going to open the right way with all of your foam pad and tape backing off of the card. We want to now fix this in place, leaving an even border on all four edges. The final stage for the card, of course, is to put on your sentiment. Take foam pads and leaving the backing in place at the moment, but position and work on your card where you'd like your sentiment to sit. So I think, yep, that looks about right. So once you've decided on the position, take off the backing and gently place that onto your card and just put some pressure. The final card. Added a few gems in the corners just to finish off this design. It's amazing. This stencil is just perfect for the shaker card. Just got to do that. It's a shaker card. I'm allowed to. And I hope you found this video full of inspiration for you. The instructions, I hope you found them nice and clear and easy to follow. My card is your card, really, so I'd love for you to recreate this and put your own spin, choose your own colour, etc. So just finally from me, Debbie Watts, Aricula Card Art, and from me, until the next time, happy crafting.